started this conversation during our anniversary weekend, and the whole conversation was all about covenant versus contract when it comes to marriage. And we discussed how, we were talking, which was so interesting, about the difference of people's mindsets when they go into marriage. Because there's a different mindset when you go into a contract, and there's a different mindset when you go into covenant. Contract is thinking of all the fallout. Contract is trying to protect self. There's some emotion there, but that emotion can also be fleeting, right? Whereas covenant should be the agreement that you have not only with one another, but also with God. Right? It's the commitment, not even the agreement, the commitment you have with one another and God.
Well, let's stop right there, because I think you make a really good point. So when you're talking about covenant, you're mentioning God, meaning there's something above you that you guys are both binding into. With today's marriages, that part is left out. So what you're left with when you take God out, you're left with a contract. And with any kind of contract, you write a contract to protect yourself in case that contract does what? Fails, right?
Or fails, whatever.
And what a lot of people tend to do is they approach it with that way, but they don't do their due diligence the same way you do due diligence with any other contract. You sign this contract assuming it might work out, or assuming that if I do what I'm supposed to do, we both will honor the terms of the contract.
You know what's funny? I don't mean to cut you off.
Sure.
Here's what's funny about
She always needs to cut me off.
I do. Is that the fine print when it comes to marriage that people don't read in a contract is that unless you have the designer of the product involved in said agreement, there's going to be a problem. So if God is not a part of your marriage, of your union, right? His principles, how he designed it, what he purposed it for, there's going to be issues that you won't be able to overcome or will run into because you're not using the manual from the manufacturer.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point. To go back to what I was saying before, I was so elegantly cut off.
Whatever.
But when you're not doing your due diligence, entering this agreement or this contract, when you're not putting those right things in place, what you do is you put it at a higher risk of not working. And I love my friends because they're very honest with me when we have these kind of discussions. I get a lot of different perspectives because some of my friends are married and some are single. And the ones who've been married for a longer period of time, they realize that this thing ain't no contract, right? There's no, this is not a contract. This is bigger than that because the implications of it not working are a lot more dire, right? The implications of it failing are a lot more harsh, right? You have kids, you have family involved, you have your feelings involved. And then you hear the perspective of guys who are single and they're looking at the married guys and they're saying, well, that marriage thing, that sounds great for you guys, but if this ever happened, I'd be out of here. And it's not that cut and dry. Like in a contract, if you fail to meet the obligation in a contract, right? Something happens, right? There's a consequence for it. And sometimes there's an immediate consequence for it. In a marriage, in a covenant, it's not that cut and dry, right? Certain things will happen. There will be certain failures. There will be certain trespasses. There will be certain things that you didn't expect and you never thought that you would put up with. But then you realize this is bigger than just me and you. We're in a covenant. And if I'm in a covenant, I'm having faith that that thing that is binding us in this covenant is going to get us through that. It's not as easy to say, well, you didn't do this or you failed to do that and I'm out of here. That's not quite how covenant works.
I waited my turn.
Here she goes.
And it took a while for me to wait my turn.
And here she goes.
So here's the thing. Sometimes, and I'll speak with women, we'll get into something, if we believe in God, we'll get into a marriage with our belief in God. And maybe our mate doesn't have the same belief systems. And we're trying to hold on to our belief systems for the both of us. And it could go vice versa.
Right.
Right? we're trying to hold on to what we're believing God said about it, but we're also unequally yoked. And so one person can come into a marriage thinking they're covenant, and another person can go into that same marriage thinking about contract. And so now you have conflict of interest, you have confusion when there comes disagreement, and all kind of other dysfunctions that keep moving throughout your marriage, because this person's going to want to pray and want to seek God, and this person's going to want to have a conversation maybe with friends or whatever, or maybe not even want to talk about it at all. And so now you have contract and covenant in the same place.
Fine. Prenuptial agreement. How does that work? I'm asking you.
Prenuptial agreement?
How do you feel about that in the context of what you just said? Because a prenup, right, is basically what? Right? It's something that is going to absolve you of something if the contract fails. But now from a covenant perspective, how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about a prenup?
Ooh, that's a good question, you guys. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like how you threw that one in there.
Threw it right in there.
Well, if I had to think about it very quickly, which apparently I do, I don't have issues with dealing with a prenup, okay? I don't have issues with dealing with saying, you know what, no matter what, we're both taken care of. Ha, gotcha. Because if you have a prenup and you're believing in God, we both should be taken care of. Now we're going to get into over all different episodes. We're going to get into finances. We're going to get into trespass. We're going to get into all these other things. First of all, I'm not thinking divorce. I'm not thinking what happens when it goes out. My personal opinion, it's just my opinion, is divorce when it comes to abuse is like, yes, because everyone needs to be safe, right?
Of course.
But when I'm thinking prenup,
and I'm assuming, not to cut you off, but you're not just talking about physical abuse, you're talking about mental abuse as well. Okay. Yeah,
if your life is being destroyed mentally or physically, that's an issue. That's a problem, and we'll talk about that another time. But when I'm thinking prenup, like you and I, when we were younger, we had conversations about prenup. We got married young, so didn't need one then. But
I had nothing else.
We had love.
Yep.
Love would carry.
And I wanted a prenup to keep my nothing to myself.
You did. But you know, if you, because we want to be real, right? So we do have people that are thinking prenup, and we don't want to be having conversations where we're downing people trying to make sure that they have an agreement. But the prenup, in my opinion, needs to cover just that we're all taken care of. It needs to cover that the household, meaning the children that came in the household, are taken care of. If you're going into it and we're getting ready to, y'all talking about a prenup, it means that we're walking away and no one's walking away dragging on the street without nothing, living at their mama's house. You know what I'm saying? Because if we were in this, I don't care if you were out working and I was here raising the children. The only way we had a household is if the whole household was taken care of. You can pay for a house, but if you ain't got nobody in it, it's not a household. It's not the entire family unit. Somebody's got to be raising the children. Somebody's got to be doing that. And there's value in each and every part of what people are doing. The world put value, monetary value, on the differences within the household that people are doing. But hello, we're in quarantine, and what happened? Everybody realized all the stay-at-home mamas are worth a lot more than they get paid. A lot more respect too. Why? Because it's easier to go to work and go to the bathroom by yourself than it is to have a toddler sitting on your lap when you do it. That was a sidebar. I apologize.
I was going to say, how about the question was about prenups? We just went somewhere else.
No, but the reason why I said that is because prenups usually go off of who got what that's valued more.
Well, it's usually who has what.
Who has what when
entering into.
When entering. But then when you come into a marriage, you're bringing all of that together to build a household, right? And in that household, there's other things that are going to come up that are just as valuable. You know, I always say to people, if millionaires, you know, didn't need all of the emotional and all of the love and all of the support, we wouldn't have millionaires that are committing suicide and all this other stuff either, because mentally, emotionally, they're going through difficult times. It's not just about the money.
Right.
You need to be in a relationship where there's love and there's support and there's encouragement and there's honesty and a boot in the butt.
Well, the reason why I brought the question up is because we were talking about covenant and contracts.
Yeah.
And for those who are watching, we're not saying that you're not entering a contract. That's not what we're saying at all. Because it is an agreement between two people.
It is an agreement.
Right? It's a lawfully binding agreement. That's why you go get your marriage license and you make it official. But you can't have only that view of it. Right? And the reason why I threw you the curveball about the prenup.
Thank you so much.
Because that part focuses more on the contractual obligation of it as opposed to the covenant perspective of it.
Yeah.
Not saying one is more than the other, but saying that there has to be a recognition that it's not just one or the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why I threw you that little curveball.
And I appreciated it.
No, she didn't.
I did not whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I just want to add this about the covenant, because we talk to a lot of different married couples, and we'll talk to them separately, meaning you talk with the men and I talk with the women. And when it comes down to it, and I'll say it again, God created marriage. And so it, for me, would be wise to ask the creator of what it is, how it should work, how that should manifest itself. And it helps to understand what God intended marriage to be and to move as, so that when stuff happens, or even when stuff doesn't happen, you're just having conversations about the things in marriage, whether finances or the kids, you can come into some kind of alignment and agreement with what it was intended to be in the first place. You and I, we have gone through so many different stages of marriage. We've been young married couple, we've had young babies, and now we're, a married couple we're empty nesters almost completely. Youngest graduated, but we've gone through so many different stages within our life, and had we had not used God's direction,
Can I just cut you off right there? Because
no,
there's a reason why I want to cut you off right there. When you're talking about the different stages that our marriage has gone through, the evolution of our marriage, one thing I do want to highlight, I don't want you to skip over it. We did have the kids young. We did get married young. We did grow together as a young couple. But one thing that was very instrumental in where we are now is the turbulence that we went through, which really made us look at covenant versus marriage.
Yeah.
Versus contract.
Yeah.
Where we were at a point in our marriage where we were saying, do we dissolve this agreement?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or do we say, no, it's bigger than us?
Yeah.
Because we're in covenant.
Well, truth be told, we were at the point where we were like, this is over. Like, look, I'm just gonna find myself some peace and quiet somewhere else. You do you, love you over there. I'm gonna do me, love me over there. And then God was like, "Are you guys done trying to do it your way?" That's what happened with us. And then He brought us back together His way. Because other than that, no. And that's how we can say in this moment, and I can say in this moment, that if we've done it not God's way, but still going to church, still trying to serve God, but we were still a part of the contract and how we felt things should be handled. And it was either your way or my way. And then on the stuff that, other stuff, it was God's way. And it had to turn around where it wasn't your way or it was my way.
And we're just going to be real, because this is just between us. We got to a point, I know I can speak for myself. I got to a point where I was like, well, if you can't do what you signed up to do, then why am I here?
Yeah.
I was looking at it strictly from contractual perspective, right? Yeah, I love you, but what about this, this, and this? You agreed to do X, Y, and Z. And it's not that clear. It's not that cut and dry.
It's not.
Right? And like you said, I appreciate the fact that, we looked at something bigger than us. We said that we can't, our way is not working.
Yeah.
Our way is not working.
Yeah.
So either we dissolve this thing and you go your way and I go my way and we go try to figure it out somewhere else, or we can give it over to something bigger than us, applying the same guidelines that the contract may have, but they're realizing that it's not only the contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
That being said, what would be the cause of action you give to someone who's thinking about marriage now, as we wrap this edition up?
Wow. Okay. So call to action when thinking about marriage, whether you're engaged, whether you're a single person. For me, would be understanding marriage from God's perspective, understanding what your part of marriage is, and really going to the scripture that talks about love and whether or not you have even been capable to love yourself, because that's a huge thing. A lot of us, like you and I got together and we loved each other, or we did what we thought love was for each other. But we melted together in our brokenness, and then our brokenness broke up in our face. So if you're preparing for marriage, you really should be looking internally at who you are and what hang-ups, what brokenness, what pains are inside of you before you jump into marriage. Because when you get into marriage, all of that stuff exasperates because you can't hold it down. You're living 24 hours with this person, and now it's all out and open. For me personally, I really think that you need an internal moment to see and to deal and to heal some things before you add that wagon to somebody else. For us, marriage counseling was like, for me, this is where I took it. You like him, you like her, let's do it. And it's not that. So if you are engaged, definitely marriage counseling that is not just, hey, you guys are good, that gets deep and dirty and ugly, and gets to the raw of what you need, what your expectations are, because sometimes we assume we know what somebody else's expectation is because we have the same end goal, but how we're getting there, two different things. Yeah. So when we start, if you decide, we're gonna work out, and you decide you're gonna run, and I go get on my bike, and you're like, dude, we're running, and I'm like, no, we're riding the bike. Well, aren't we going over, you doing a mile? Yeah, I'm gonna do my mile on my bike. You gonna do your mile walking. And now there's confusion and frustration because you want me to get off the bike. And I'm like, why don't you get on your bike? So knowing how you're gonna get there, getting proper marriage counseling where it's just not agreement that you love each other. Because honestly, even that needs to be looked at. How you love each other. Do you love each other the way God intended love to look like? Right. Is my 2 cents on that. And we're gonna keep talking about all of that.
Yes, she will. Yes, she will. Yes, she will. Yes, she will. But the call to action I would give to, especially young men thinking about contemplating marriage, is really understand that it's not just a contract. It's not just, well, I'm marrying you, and you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of give and take. There's nuance to it. There's a lot of give and take, and we as guys, we tend to say, well, I'm going to be the head of household. Mm-hmm. I'm usually the breadwinner, so therefore,
don't be insulted because he said usually.
I said usually. No. I'm not right. I know this is 2020.
Right. We know all our sisters, girls are getting money.
Yeah,
don't be upset.
I don't want nobody on Twitter and Snapface and and Pagebook coming back at me.
Oh Lord, help us, Jesus.
But seriously, right? So usually that's the thought process, that because I'm usually the breadwinner, then what I say goes. And that's a recipe for a very, very, very interesting and short marriage. Because you're not going to find alignment that way. You're not going to find alignment that way. You have to be very open-minded. Marriage counseling is the best place to vet that out. Yeah. That's the best place to vet that out, because what that does is it allows you to peel the onion back on the relationship, where the relationship is at that point, forcing you to look at each other from a different perspective, right? Like you said earlier, I love what you said earlier, deal with yourself first before you hitch your wagon to that person. So those are our 2 calls to action. What was yours again?
Mine was going internally and looking within yourself and working on yourself. And then yours was also well aligned with what I said too, getting the marriage counseling. So I think we're basically in the same place.
We're in the same place. See, that's what synergy. We have great synergy now because we've taken some of our own advice. But look forward for our next episode. If you have questions about what we've said, send us your questions via email.
And actually, you can do it through Facebook, Instant Messenger as well. Yeah. And also, when you send a question, make sure you send a question by Friday, right after the video post, by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that we can make sure that we can answer as many questions as we can for the following Wednesdays. So, just a little backside. Wednesdays at, what time are we going live? I don't even know.
Thank y'all for joining us. This was just between us. This was just between us.